Learned something new there. Great for a track day, but not on the UK roads. If you try this, you're probably going to hurt yourself or someone else. Today we're going to take a look at a video by Mick Drives. He loves to drive and he loves to drive fast, but he loves to drive safely, and he's sharing those safety tips for any petrol heads out there. Point being, if you're a petrol head, you should definitely check this guy out. Now we're going to check this video out. It's got 3 tips on braking properly, see how it relates to learning to drive and driving a car, see if we agree, disagree, can add anything extra, or actually learn anything. Let's get into the video.
I think very, very few people would say the brake pedal is the most important.
And the first thing he comes out with is that the brake is the most important pedal, and I 100% agree. It's also probably the scariest thing for driving instructors because it's the hardest thing for us to control. If someone accelerates too much, we can press the brake, no problem. If someone brakes too hard or brakes wrong, that's a lot harder to fix, especially slamming that brake on because someone's going to come straight into the back of us, and there is nothing we can do to fix it.
I'm going to give you 3 tips on how to improve your use of the brake pedal.
So his first tip, don't brake. Saucy packet.
So the first tip is that sometimes you just don't need to brake.
No jokes, he's absolutely right. Really important thing that driving instructors just constantly try and teach is don't brake so much. It's got all sorts of name. I call it the no stopping game, but it's got all sorts of name. It's basically looking ahead and preparing nice and early and not joining the other sheep by rushing into the red light with your foot slammed on the gas, slamming the brakes on, and then flying off again from zero. And there's absolutely loads of benefits for not doing this that Mick actually explains as well. And the first and most important fact with this is when your foot's off the gas but you stay in gear, you use 0 fuel, which means every second your car is moving, you are saving money.
Is when you're off the gas, in gear and you're off the gas, you actually use 0 fuel. It's really cool. This is because of engine braking.
And I don't know about you, but the price of fuel at the moment, I do not want to waste a penny.
And the car is injecting no fuel, we have infinite miles per gallon. It's a huge, huge boost to your fuel economy.
The other green flags that oh my God. The other green flags that he explains is there's far less chance of getting a rear end shunt. Because you're slowing down gradually, you're giving anyone behind you that might be doing something they shouldn't be, shouting at the kids or whatever else that they shouldn't be doing, playing with a radio, an extra chance to see that actually you're slowing down before you slam the anchors on. It's also going to save you money on brake pads. You're not using brake pads, and if you look, I don't know if the last time you checked brake pads, they're not cheap. And my favourite reason is it's far easier and quicker to get off when the light goes green if you're already still rolling. Just remember not to do it if there's another lane there with a green light and block cars from getting into that lane when yours is red. It's going to really upset them. Don't want to be there, trust me. Tip number 2, he talks about squeezing, not pushing.
Squeeze, don't push. This is the idea that rather than using the brake pedal as a button or a switch, you squeeze into the pedal progressively.
Yeah, it might sound a bit random. What he's talking about here is you've got 2 different ways of pressing the brake. The first one, you press that brake hard and you press it fast. You feel the bite, you feel the car, judder, not very comfortable. What some people would probably refer to as erratic driving. And then you've got option 2, when you press that brake gently and you progressively press it harder and harder over a second or 2. Option 1 happens a lot when people are learning to drive when they brake too late into roundabouts and junctions. This is when they realise they haven't braked enough, they panic, and that's what I call panic braking. They slam that brake on hard and fast. Not comfortable, normally leaves you with a bit of adrenaline, just not a great situation. And far more chance of someone going into the back of you as well.
I'm coming into this corner now. If I just push, the balance of the car has to recover from me doing that.
And Mick mentions how the weight of the car actually goes to the front wheels and gives them chance to bite into the tarmac harder. What he hasn't mentioned here is what I did when I was young and silly and it was wet and I went round a roundabout and tried to brake round the roundabout and all the weight went onto the front wheels and the back wheels carried on going straight instead of turning, with me turning round 180 degrees on the roundabout. Point being, don't brake into corners or around the corners, instead brake before the corner. Otherwise you're going to look like a right sausage like I did. it.
If you just press the brake pedal, you will get into ABS and you will not get the full value.
If you just press that brake hard and fast, your car's going to kick into ABS. If anyone doesn't know what ABS is, it's when the car computer automatically takes over and it locks your wheels up for a second, then unlocks them, basically stopping you skidding down the road. But it also means you're not going to be anywhere near as much control as you would if you didn't kick into ABS at all. And that's what he's talking about. By avoiding the ABS, not slamming the brakes on too hard if possible, you're always going to have more control.
But if you progressively ease into the pedal, if you just get the pad to touch and then you start squeezing, you can actually get 100% brake pressure out of the brakes and make sure that they operate at their maximum.
The other really important point of what Mick hasn't mentioned here is by touching that brake for a second or so, when someone's really close behind you and you're planning to turn or you need to slow down approaching a roundabout or whatever else, you're giving them a heads up that you're slowing down, decreasing the chance of a rear shunt massively. And all that requires is an extra second of preparation of touching that brake really gently.
Trail braking.
Trail braking. I will be honest, I've never heard of trail braking. It's not something we ever have to teach in people learning to drive a car on the UK roads. I don't know if I like the sound of it, but I'm open-minded, so let's have a look.
Trail braking is advanced and it's cool. Not a lot of people fully understand it.
Advanced and cool. Two words that do not mix with a 17, 18-year-old learning to drive. My first thoughts are do not try this at home. Okay, so trail braking is essentially braking into the corner, braking extremely late.
There's a great way this was once described to me, which is that it's as simple as this. If you're still on the brakes when you turn the steering wheel, you're trailing the brakes.
For normal driving techniques on the UK roads, I can't see any reason for doing this. You're braking extra late, which means you're not giving the person behind you enough notice that you're actually planning to slow down for the corner. And if they're not paying attention, they're going to do the same and possibly go into the back of you.
You've got to brake pretty late. I'm braking now, and I'm still braking, and I'm still braking, and now I'm off the brakes. The idea is you turn late.
If it's wet, you've got a lot higher chance of sliding and the back end flying straight out and carrying on straight and you spinning on the middle of the road. This is just generally not a technique you should be using on the normal UK roads. But Mick does mention this, so keep watching.
This is definitely an advanced concept. It's also quite dangerous on the road.
Mick has just said this is advanced and it's dangerous on the UK roads, so don't try it at home. But still well worth understanding.
To be honest, to get the maximum amount of benefit, you really have to be going a lot faster than I'm doing on some of these streets. This
And I guess the question is, where can you use it?
is really of maximum benefit if you're on a track or if that is the only place where it's really, really useful.
Maybe it's just the perspective, but I can't believe he's doing 60 around these corners, to be honest. It makes me a little bit anxious just watching it. Just pointed out, in order to actually use trail braking properly, you need to be going a lot faster than 60 miles per hour, which you're not going to be doing on the UK roads, and you really shouldn't, because if you do, you're going to be really dangerous. So with that in mind, this is not something that the average Joe should do. It's just good to understand.
The bite you get is really quite good, but you're closer to the limit because you're combining those two actions. So it's kind of tricky. It's a give and it's a take.
When Mick talks about the limit here, just to clarify, he's talking about how close you are to actually crashing the car. So when he's talking about that with this particular tip, probably not a good idea to do. Okay, let's just clarify Mick's 3 tips. Tip number 1, don't brake. Absolutely fantastic tip. In fact, we should always be aiming to brake as little as possible and accelerate as little as possible. By accelerating less, you're going to save fuel. By braking less, you're going to also save fuel, save your brakes, and generally have a more comfortable drive. If everyone did that, our driving experience on the roads would be far, far better and probably a lot less road ragey. Tip number 2, squeeze, don't push. Far less likely for someone to rear end shunt you, a far smoother driving experience for yourself and any passengers, and is definitely going to help following from tip number 1. Because if you're having to brake hard, it's because you haven't looked ahead enough to see what's coming up to know that you actually need to slow down a bit earlier. Tip number 3, no. Trail braking. Learned something new there. Great for a track day, but not on the UK roads. If you try this, you're probably going to hurt yourself or someone else. Never brake into corners, not a good idea unless you are on a racetrack or you're a very experienced driver, in which case I'd still say don't do it on the UK roads. If you want to find out anything else about learning to drive, have a look at my online driving course in the description below or in the comments above. If you've enjoyed the video, like. If you've got a different opinion to me or you want to share your opinion, get it in the comments, and I'll see you all soon. Boom!